Getting through or getting into life. Hello, I'm Ranjan Kumar, founder Mysticfusion International and authentic self-leadership coach. Well, this is going to be another interesting episode for me because most of this is what I speak about myself and my experiences with life, and this idea also has come actually only from my own experience of living in the moment. And for a very long time I was listening, I learned about people speaking about living in the moment, being in the now, and learning about presence, being available in the moment. And there are times I philosophically try to understand what exactly it is about and how do I execute that. And that's why I thought I wanted to speak about this today. For over 20 years of my life, I was reading a lot, and most of the literature and most of the books that I read were predominantly about success and making things happen and making something out of my own life. And absolutely, yes. Honestly, I really wanted to make something out of my life because I wanted to create meaning. And I also learned about setting an agenda for your own life. I learned about goal setting. I learned about success psychology. I spoke about it a number of times, and obviously there were many things in my life which I was turning them real. And then I came to learn about the law of attraction, and I got into the science of thinking and how to manifest your own desires and how to turn your goals real. That was on the one side. But after 20 years, somewhere down the lane, I realized that there is something very essential that I'm missing in my life. And this something is very close to my heart. And I, in spite of all the success that I was creating outside, in spite of all the great friendships that I was creating outside, in spite of all the great books that I was reading, after having read these hundreds of books, if there is a sense of guilt somewhere within, which says that you are missing on something. There is something fundamentally wrong about what you're doing in life. And if by the time you go to bed, you're obsessed about tomorrow, you're obsessed about your next month, you're obsessed about what could not be done today, or what remains unfinished in your life, then probably there is fundamentally something wrong. And I started reflecting on what might be wrong, what might be perhaps going wrong in my own life when everything seems to be going right from a materialistic point of view, from a worldly point of view. And at this point I started deep reflection, and now I started finding that even my approach towards meditation and reflection was quite different. And at this point I understood that my very approach towards life was different. And I started making sense of where I was losing the game of life, or the inner life. And it was like I was playing the game of inner tennis. And sometimes I was thinking like an achiever, and sometimes I was thinking like a saint, and doing lots of meditation and talking a lot about self-reflection and everything. But at times I would feel that there was something fundamentally that I was missing in life. And this was this thing that I'm going to talk with you about today. This was my approach towards my own self, or my approach towards my own life. And if this could be corrected, I didn't know at that point of time, but today I'm confidently telling you that if this could be fundamentally corrected, not by trying to emulate me, or not trying to imitate me or copy me or copying somebody else, but trying to dig deeper into your own heart and start listening to your own self, and look at yourself and find out which is your approach out of these two approaches. And I found that there are two approaches to life: getting through life and getting into life. For 20 years, I was I was doing things from a perspective of getting through life. It is even if I held a book in my hand, I would be eager. My fingers would be right at the bottom of the page, in order to hastily complete my page and get to the next page and then to the next page. And I would not find satisfaction, or I would not feel fulfilled until I've reached the end of the book. And I would feel this deep satisfaction by the mere completion of the book than by gathering the essence of the book, by absorbing the essence of the book. And then it so happened that about 2-3 years ago, I met a professional trainer, and who I would respect a lot, and I would look at him, and such a cool guy, and such a fantastic person, such a fantastic trainer and speaker, and I would look at him, the cool approach towards he had towards his own life and his own trainings and seminars. And then it so happened that I visited his place once, and I was the kind of questions that I was asking now were quite different. For the first 20 years, I was more curious as to what made them successful, what are their strategies, what are their schedules, and what are their networks, then what are the groups that they are into, and all these kinds of things. But here I come across a person who doesn't belong to any networking group, who is not a member of any mastermind group, who is not into those strict regimens and strict agendas in life. But I found that there is something fundamentally different about this person. And when I visited his place, my asking questions was different, because now I was not so curious about what kind of trainings they have undergone, or what kind of courses they have done for themselves, or what would be the few tips that they would give me. Now I was not at all bothered about them. I wanted to find something very deep, and that's why my question was, what's your approach towards your own life, and what's your approach towards trainings and your public speaking engagements and your reading of books and all these things. And during all this conversation, something interesting unfolded, and his approach was like no preparation at all. He said like, I don't prepare, Mr. Ranjan, I don't ever prepare neither for my trainings nor for my talks, and I'm not so much into reading. And by that time I was an obsessed reader. I never believed that any such interesting person would come across in my life, and I wouldn't even believe that such an excellent trainer would not be a reader. And when I asked him how many books he would have read about his own domain, and he said there are a couple of books that I read long back, and probably the max number of books that I might have read even about my own domain would be around 20 books. And I was shocked. Now here I'm talking to such an ace trainer, and he says that I've read only 20 books in my life about this, my own area of expertise. And he is one of the highest paid trainers that I ever met in the last 2 years, before 2 years, until ago 2 years. And I find that this man is not even that avid reader, and he is not that keen on even preparation before his own trainings. But what brings him these fantastic reviews from his own trainings, and the way he spoke with such a command on his subject. And then I asked him, so what do you do mostly? What do you read most of the time? And he said, I read fiction, I read novels. And now I didn't want to get into what novels and who are the authors, but I wanted to get something. I wanted to see what is his approach towards at least reading. And I asked him how often do you read? And he said there is never a single day in my life when I retire to bed without having read at least 2 hours every day. And if I haven't read in the whole day, then I probably would take time to read for at least 2 hours before I retire to bed. And this was fantastic for me. Now I asked now I know that reading fiction triggers your imagination and creativity, and I've found this influence on me also. And then I asked okay, then the next question was a little silly, a little childish, and I asked him so sir, please tell me, how many novels do you read? Now I was jumping back into my achiever mindset. So I was very curious about, how many again. Now I didn't realize at that point of time that it's not the numbers that matter, it's the essence that matters. And I asked him, so sir, how many novels do you read in a book? And he said, well, there is no guarantee about it, Mr. Ranjan. It might be one, it might be two, three, or it might not even be half a novel, or probably even 1/4 of a novel. Then I started wondering, like, how's that possible? Like, do you decide that I'm going to read only one novel a month, or two novels a month, and or do you decide it when you catch hold of this novel and you decide by the size of this book? And you know what he said? Well, let me tell you how I do it. And here's where he revealed his secret. And this would literally create a lasting impact in my own mind. And I want to share that with you. Well, if you're ready for that. So here's what he shared with me. He shared that, see, when I start reading a novel, there are times like, I get through the pages, but only a little. And the moment I find something very riveting, very interesting, a very thought-provoking piece of language in that paragraph, you know what? There are times I found that I would stay with the same paragraph for the whole month. And this was beyond my imagination. Somebody staying in the same paragraph, reading it, rereading it for such a long time, one paragraph for the whole month, that was unimaginable. And I was taken aback for a while, and I asked, like, what do you do that? I mean, what are you learning? Are you learning the language? Or are you looking into the kind of words that the author used? What exactly happens? And here's what he shared with me. He said, Mr. Ranjan, if an author could bring his thought to such a beautiful paragraph, which could trigger the imagination beyond my own imagination and expectation, then there is something that I must tap into. And that is not the author's language. And that cannot be the choice of words, because I have those words in my own brain and I'm well read. But there is something deeper, and that is the essence of his own thinking, the essence of his own mind. And I reread it to such an extent that I get into that state of mind which actually the author experienced while he was writing, crafting this paragraph. And sometimes it takes a week, a fortnight, or a month, but I enjoy it to that level that I get a sneak preview of the author's mindset. The time or the thoughts which triggered this kind of fantastic imagination, where he materialized it, coined these words, and he played a jugglery of words and brought this paragraph, which could give you an experience of what he wants you to see, or he wants your mind to experience. Isn't that beautiful? And that's where I realized that there is a different approach to life, and that approach is getting into life. And this is where I changed I don't want to say that I emulated that person, but I was really inspired, because after 20 years of getting through life, rushing through the moments, working on an agenda, I found that most of the times I was like working on the treadmill, and I was like that, Bollywood superstar, doing this, doing that, talking to them, talking to this person, writing this, writing that, and creating this, creating that, so many things. But the point was I was losing on the other side. And here's where I learned that this philosophy of getting into life is all about slowing down to the speed of life. Slowing down and allowing this cool breeze of life to touch your cheeks, and to experience life in the moment. I want you to experience this. Are you talking to your son? Are you talking to your daughter? Are you talking to your mom? Are you talking to your dad? Are you talking to your own close friend? Are you getting through the moment, or are you getting into the moment. And I found that some of the profoundest experiences in life can only be experienced when you slow down to the speed of life. And that's exactly when I learned this art of slowing down to the speed of life, and I understood the difference between getting through and getting into life. I want you to experience this for your own self, and I promise you that getting into life is going to make your life richer and richer and richer. I want you to see life from this perspective and see where you can find a balance between getting through life and getting into life. All the best. Love you.